So hello and welcome to the second session of the PDDL tooling tutorials. Now where we left off in the first one was looking at one syntax error in a domain file, in this case in the demo session. Now you could see how the syntax error in the domain gets propagated to the problem file. Now number of predicates seem to be undeclared. Well, yes, so that's where you see all the warnings and errors. You could also see them with the numbers over here. That's what those numbers mean, and the color of the file is colored accordingly. But we can also see that this file was modified this way from the original session, and that's the diff here locally. And we can see the dot over here as an indication that there are local changes in this session that was created and last updated yesterday. And that's what takes us here, that yeah, that's the one session change. And you could either take a diff or push it to the server if you could, because this is a read-only session, you cannot. You have more options over here, which we'll look at later. But for now, we'll just discard this one change and see that these errors will clear, except for the other file that's not really a domain file. And here we go. It's the way it came. That's the way you work with the sessions in VS Code. But let's not stop there. Let's go further. Let's see whether we can customize one of these sessions to the point that it would serve as a template for students. Whether we can create effectively a whole classroom with the assignment that the students should be working on as an exercise. So to do that, let's go back to the online editor, and yeah, that's where you can start easily, create a session, save a session. Let's put some code into this file. We'll save it, and we will, as before, we will open it in the offline editor. So we've done that before, but this time because the session in here was already downloaded and there basically are already files, there is a workspace with something in it. We have options such as we can replace all of the 9 files in this session folder and just replace it with all the new content, with the new session. Or we can put the new session into a separate folder, but add it to this workspace side by side with the previous session. Or the simple, we'll just put it in a new place and we'll open just that new one. So here we go. We shall put it into a place like that. So here is a folder that's created for this session, but let's call it a template. So enter, and create. Now the window reloads, and the new session is fetched. So here we have the file that we created online, the way it was. It's right here. Now what we want to do instead is, in fact, click on this and see that, yeah, you can rename, but let's delete. And let's instead, and we can see the deletion actually marked down here. It's waiting to be published, but let's do something else. Let's go to the overview page, and if that doesn't open, it doesn't open every single time, and you can actually say you don't want to see it again. You can get it again from the view command palette, PDDL, show overview page. So there it is. And besides all the resources and the configuration, we have this hello world example. So let's actually do that. And as you can see, it's created 2 files. Here they are, and it invoked the planner. And the planner we ran is the solver that's hosted in solver.planning.domains, and it created this plan. So yes, that's the Hello World example in PDDL. But that's pretty much how we want the exercise to end. So here we do have the end, and let's see how to customize this to get sort of back to the beginning. So first of all, let's actually accept these changes as it is. Let's push this to the server, and let us verify that it was uploaded up there. So we can open it again in a second tab here, basically reload the session online. And yes, indeed, we have the two files as created offline. So perfect, it works as expected. Now, if this is to serve as a training exercise, well, we better give it some instructions. So why don't we create a README file, and into the file we could put instructions such as these, and if you have a Markdown extension installed, you can get a preview this way and read it, make sure that it's readable. And it basically says open the file and run a test, and then publish the session back to the server. Now, what does it mean to run a test? Well, because this is a developer environment meant for code, we can create test cases. So let's actually create one. That's done by creating a, say, hello world ptest.json. Now, files called ptest.json, they are recognized by the system. They let you specify a domain file, hello world domain.ptdl, and let's say the options will always be empty. And then let's specify at least one test case. And the one test case will be called just by the problem file, hello world problem. And let's just leave it like that. And now that when we go to the test pane, we should see one test right here. And indeed, that's what we've just created. We can open the two files that are standing in for the domain and problem in this test case, and we can also run it. So that again runs the planner and says, yep, here is the plan. And actually, yes, the test at the end passes because we got a plan. But let's take it further. So down in the plan viewer, we have the hamburger menu on the top right, which lets you, for more complex plan, generate a nice HTML report and open it in the browser or send it to someone. But we can as well, we can save this plan into a file, and let's call this expected. And the expected plan is right here. We could as well validate it, and yes, it is valid as per the validator tool that we installed earlier. We could see if we invalidate it, what happens. Well, let's modify the action name and see that we get a warning. There it is. So there is no action of that name. For more complex plans, this might be handy, especially if you cannot get the planner to give you the plan you're expecting. You can try to write it yourself and validate it, and that usually indicates what is wrong with your domain model. So you kind of reverse engineer your domain logic. But now we have the plan that we are expecting. So if we go back to this test specification and open the definition again, what happens? And where did we put that? It's right here. We can now put the expected plans and put basically the one that we have just saved. Now, if we rerun the plan, if we rerun the test case, we not only check that we get any plan, but we also assert that the plan is exactly as we expected. Right, and if we wanted to run, suppose there were more than one test cases in this workspace, then we can run them all, and that also gives us a more readable report like that. All right, so now we have a session that's all equipped with a domain, problem, expected plan, some instructions, and test case. We could put multiple test cases if you want the assignment to have multiple steps, but let's keep it simple. One thing to note is that why is it that we are that we know that we need to address this solver in the cloud is because it's saved in the settings. The settings for this folder are in the VS Code folder, where usually all of the settings of Visual Studio Code go. And in the settings file, you can see that's the only thing we can we've specified here, and that happened when we downloaded the session. And the session indeed had that solver specified as well in one of its plugins. So that's all replicated in here. Now, what we perhaps should do is clear all of this again and see if this is basically not the template, but the end result. We want to save it, upload all of these changes to the server. So yeah, we're good. And we also want to duplicate this session so that we can create the initial assignment, because this one actually contains the solution. So let's do that. Now we asked for the session to be duplicated. So it didn't cooperate, so I'll do it another way. It goes duplicated, but it didn't open. If we go to the long list of features here in the command palette, we have a command just for the download a planning domain session. So here I can paste the ID of the new session, and now I'll actually exercise the second choice. And I don't want to close the initial template, but I want to have the two side by side. So for that, we put it into a folder called template start here. And yes, we want to have them side by side, so you can see that that's the template that's going to preserve the kind of expected end of how the exercise should be completed. And now we are going to take some things away from it to create the starting point for the exercise. Now, before we do that though, let's make sure we notice what changed here. So in the source control, now we have two source control routes, and we can work with those independently. The one you select up here is the one that's showing your status down there, and you also get the corresponding features for the one you select. You can select both of them and see all of the changes and so on. But if we now go to the domain file and basically take things away from it to make it a good starting point for the exercise, we can keep the requirements, but we can remove the type. We remove the action. And in the problem file, we can keep some of these things. Right, so that's now been modified. We keep the expected plan because that's essentially the assignment, and now you can start seeing that, yep, indeed, it's not a valid plan anymore because we don't have that action. And if we look at the source control panel here, yep, the start here session has been modified, and we can push those changes to the server. Now you can see that's just been updated, and now all we need to do is to give the read-only view of this to the students. Before we do, let's verify that things work down here. So now we have two sessions back to back. One is the start here, and the second one is the end result, the expected end result. And now we can run both of the test cases to see that indeed the finished end result works, and we got a plan, while the start here is now incomplete and we are not finding any plan. All right, so that has been the second session that shows how to customize a session to be the initial shape of the assignment for PDDL students, and how to verify that it's running or not running using the test cases. All right, see you at the next one.